Hi guys, thanks for choosing the point of view lesson. So at the start of today's class, you assessed yourself where you are in the writing process and decided that you would like to focus on point of view. So the goal of this lesson is to help you understand the effect that point of view has in a story, to give you some tools to help examine your own writing that will then help you go back into your own writing and make some informed choices as the writer or the author of your own story. So choosing the point of view, of which there are three main types that we talk about, is an intentional choice that a writer makes when they are crafting a story. So the point of today's lesson is to help you figure out how you can stay consistent once you choose a point of view, but also to choose a point of view that you feel confident with, that makes sense for your story that you are trying to tell. So we talk about the point of view being the perspective from which the story is told. So let's just for a minute imagine that you and your friend get in an argument, and I were to ask you what happened. You would tell me your perspective or what happened from your point of view. If I were to ask your friend what happened, he would probably tell me what happened from his perspective. The story may even change slightly depending on the point of view or the perspective from which I'm hearing the story. In literature, we call the person who's telling the story the narrator. And we talk about three main types of narrators. So a first person narrator is when the character telling the story is in the story. And you will see clue words like the ones in the parentheses here, I, me, we, my, and our. A third person narrator is when the character who tells the story is not inside the story. It's an outside perspective, an outside person. And you will see pronouns like she, he, they, them, or characters' names. A less commonly used type of narrator is a second person narrator. And this is when the narrator speaks directly to the reader. You, yours, your. You may have read books like this that use a second person narrator. I can think of Percy Jackson books that do this thing, also Lemony Snicket's books. They talk directly to the reader. You'll notice the point of view sunglasses over on the side of the screen. And they do have some helpful reminders about the type of pronouns, but also glasses are kind of a good image for you to think about when you're remembering point of view, because each character or each narrator sees the story through their lens, through a different lens. So why is consistency so important? So once the writer has intentionally chosen to tell the story through a point of view, all of the plot events and everything that's happening in the story is happening through that narrator's or that character's perspective or through their lens. So if the writer shifts or changes points of view, it can become very distracting and confusing for the reader. So for example, if we have a sentence that says, the cast members have discovered that you have to work together to prepare for the performance, we have an inconsistency in our point of view. First, the author mentions cast members, but then later on in the sentence, they say, you have to work together, which is inconsistent. We're shifting which lens we're seeing this through. Instead, to be more consistent, you could say the cast members have discovered that they have to work together to prepare for the performance. It's less confusing. Another example, all the girls on the squad envy Amber and wish we could be more like her. Suddenly, it's inconsistent here. First we mention the girls, and now we jump to we, as if suddenly the narrator is now part of the story instead of being a third person. So if we change that sentence to all the girls on the squad envy Amber and wish they could be more like her, now my point of view and my perspective are consistent. Now we're going to practice looking at an excerpt of text from a story by Joyce Carol Oates. So while you're reading this, and I'll read it out loud for you once, you're going to highlight all the words that indicate the type of narrator. So this would be your pronouns. So on your sheet, you're going to highlight the pronouns that you hear and see. Her sister June was 24 and still lived at home. She was a secretary in the high school Connie attended, and if that wasn't bad enough, with her in the same building, she was so plain and chunky and steady that I had to hear her praised all the time by her mother and her mother's sisters. June did this, June did that. She saved money and helped clean the house and cooked, and Connie couldn't do a thing. Her mind was all filled with trashy daydreams. My father was away at work most of the time, and when he came home, he wanted supper, and he read the newspaper at supper, and after supper, he went to bed. So at this point in the video, you want to pause, make sure that on your sheet you've indicated all the pronouns by highlighting them to see what type of narrator you have. Okay, so hopefully your paper looks something like what we have on the screen here. So her sister June was 24 and she still lived at home. She was a secretary in the high school Connie attended. So you can see all the bolded pronouns on the screen. Check that against your paper. This is a little bit confusing. I'm seeing her sister June was 24 and she still lived at home, but then suddenly down here I noticed that it says that I had to hear her praised all the time. Now it's suddenly as if I have a narrator who's in the story where there are other points that it appears that she is outside of the story. So her sister June and her mind was filled with trashy daydreams make it seem as if it's an outside third-person narrator talking about Connie, but words like I and my make it appear as if Connie is in the story herself. So once you choose a narrator, you want to stick with it. So reread this paragraph about Connie to yourself, changing all the pronouns to be first a consistent third-person narrator. Then try a consistent first-person narrator by changing all of the pronouns. So at this point, you might want to pause the video and take a second to do that for yourself. Take a minute to go back and forth between the two, and then stop and consider. Which of these two perspectives stuck out to you as a reader? So which one did you prefer? Which point of view seemed stronger to you and why? This is a personal preference. There isn't a right or a wrong answer here. And so you want to think about really your experience as a reader. Which of these two point of views did you prefer and why? Okay, so after looking at a couple of examples of why it's important to be consistent with your narrator and what you gain or lose from each one, you're now going to stop the video and you're going to go back into your own writing. For the rest of the class, you will be revising and editing your own writing based on what you've thought about and interacted with here. So when you go back into your own writing, you're going to do the following things. You're going to go back and highlight all of your pronouns. Fix any inconsistencies in pronouns that you find throughout your writing. Do you shift point of views? Is it confusing as a writer? Once you've fixed all of your inconsistencies, if you had any, you're going to then get to that sort of stop and consider spot. How do you feel about the point of view that you've chosen to use? As a reader, put yourself in your reader's shoes and think about your point of view. Try changing the point of view to a different perspective. So if you have a first person, change it to a third person. If you have a third person, change it to a first person. And really think about what you gain or lose by changing the perspectives. Now, as the writer, you decide which point of view you want to use for your writing, but also know why this is the best choice for your piece of writing. Thanks for watching the point of view lesson, and I look forward to reading what you write today.